As General Secretary of the National Council of Churches, I'm grateful to the Council's Committee on Public Education and Literacy for raising awareness of the need for and the importance of public education reform in this country. The 37 denominations that make up the National Council address a number of pressing social issues, such things as racial discrimination and poverty and the lack of affordable health care. But no less important than any of these is the need for high-quality, universally available public education.
We are leaving Black, brown, and Native children behind in many respects because we are not making the type of investments to close the opportunity gap.
The greatest challenge to American society today is the concentration of racial isolation and poverty. This is a toxic combination, and where there is both intense poverty and intense racial isolation, the schools are called failing schools, but in fact these are communities that are in desperate trouble, and we're blaming the schools for the social conditions that our society is not prepared to address.
In many respects, we talk about these populations and we talk about the achievement gap that exists, but in order to address the achievement gap, you have to address the opportunity gap to ensure that all students have access to those resources that we know provide students an opportunity to learn.
If we were serious about addressing the inequities in American society, we would be, as a nation, outraged that more than 20% of our children live in poverty. I don't know of another post-industrial modern society that has numbers of that kind. These are really third world numbers. So we must address the conditions of poverty that people live in with appropriate health care, with economic opportunity, with jobs, with everything that we can think of in terms of providing parent education.
I don't think it's a matter of asking whether or not we can afford to find the money to provide all students an opportunity to learn. Our country is at a point where we can't afford not to find the money. To ensure that all students have the opportunity to learn, we have to guarantee them access to high-quality early education, the supports necessary to recruit and retain highly effective teachers, ensure that they have access to college preparatory curricula, and that they have equitable instructional resources and policies. And when we think about it, the resources are there. We're at a point where we've got to make the decision, are we going to pay for bombs or books?
Paul Krugman, who's the Nobel Prize-winning economist who writes for the New York Times, had a column not long ago where he said, over the past decade, we spent $2 trillion on war and $1 trillion bailing out banks and investment banking firms and insurance companies. That's $3 trillion that we were able to afford.
Tax revenues are at an all-time low, the lowest that they have been in the last 50 years. I think we also have to recognize the cost savings that are there in reallocating resources from the Department of Defense and into those areas like labor and education and those areas that are about investing in our country.
If we want our society to be healthy, if we want to have children who grow up having equal educational opportunity, then we have to make an investment in the children and in their families and in their communities. And if we do not address poverty, we are not going to solve the problems of the schools, because no matter which schools replace the public schools, the children who don't speak English will still not speak English. The children who are homeless will still be homeless. The term failing schools is a fairly new term. Until the late 1990s, it was virtually non-existent. If we speak of failing schools, we are invariably talking about schools in neighborhoods, communities that are intensely poor and racially isolated. These have become almost synonymous.
For a student who attends a school in a wealthy district, walks into a world-class science laboratory, is able to sit there and work with the the tools and the resources that are necessary to achieve the learning outcome. And to take that and contrast it to a school where the students may share books, may not have a science laboratory, doesn't necessarily go through dissecting the frog because the frog does not exist. That's a different level of learning that occurs. The very success of our country depends on providing a high opportunity to learn to all students. John Donne said it best when he said that no man is an island entire of himself. We're at a point in history where we're all connected.
Each child has special sacred gifts which need to be nurtured, and all children are special and precious in God's eyes, which means that a system in which some children have access to excellent instruction while others don't simply is unacceptable. Let us together affirm the value of educating our children, each of them and all of them.